Thank you so much. I just felt, actually, as I sat down here, a little bit like Ronnie Corbett, for those of you who remember. Ronnie Corbett at the end of the tube, Ronnie sitting down in an armchair to talk to you all. But I won't be like Ronnie Corbett, I hope. But I've got a bad back, which is why I'm sitting down, so I hope you don't mind. And it is fantastic to be with all of you here this evening, absolutely filled to the rafters. It's wonderful. And I've been asked to say a little bit about why getting elected matters, a little bit about my own journey in the Green Party, a little bit about why green politics and our whole mission is just, I think, more urgent than ever today. And I wanted to start off, I guess, by picking up where Martin left off about the importance of the work that so many of you do, often unsung, the leaflet deliverers or the people who are doing the stalls on a wet Saturday. And sometimes I know it can feel it's an uphill battle, and what difference does it make? And I just want to really reinforce that it is so important and it makes such a huge difference, and we are so grateful to everybody who is already making some contribution of that kind. And as Martin said as well, if by any chance there's anyone in here who isn't yet making a contribution of that kind, we would love you to do so, because we know we're facing really huge challenges ahead in terms of so many different crises facing the country at the moment. And the country is crying out for green politics. And the way we do it, there's no shortcut. It is by those conversations with people, either on their doorsteps or over stalls or in the work queue or whatever we're doing. The opportunity to talk to people about why green politics matters is one that I would just urge you to grab. And I know sometimes, canvassing, for example, sounds quite a scary thing to do. It sounds very technical. You assume you have to know the whole manifesto backwards before you can even sort of venture out onto someone's doorstep. But I want to say something a bit controversial, which is actually the less you know, in some respects, the better. Because, it sounds a bit weird, but because when you're on someone's doorstep and they ask you a question about policy, which happens probably about 0.005% of the time, but on the odd occasion that someone does ask you and you might be feeling nervous about it, I just want to say that if you don't know the answer to it, that's fantastic, because you have a great excuse to ask that person for their email address and their telephone number, and you tell them you're going to get back to them. And that data, from an electoral point of view, is gold dust. To be able to have that mobile phone number, for example, and then be able to send a text before the election itself, just to remind people to go out and vote, that data is fantastic. So to have a good excuse to gather it, and if you do gather it, then to go back and email them with whatever the answer is to the question that they asked you when you found it out, that delights people as well, because they are so used to politicians promising things and never delivering, that the simple act of getting back to them on an issue that you promised to do will make them very excited. So you'll see that it's fantastic to go out there, even if you don't feel that you are the best expert on everything in the manifesto. A, they're unlikely to ask you, and B, if they do, that's great. I think most people just want to find somebody on their doorstep who might just talk from their own heart about why they are there on a wet Wednesday night in the rain, why this issue of green politics is so important to them. And I think that's something that probably we can all do, because we'll all have different reasons for being in this room tonight. My own reason for getting involved in the party was through the anti-nuclear movement. I was very involved in CND and kept getting up at really early times in the morning to get on buses to go to Greenham Common or to go to Molesworth or whatever. But it was through that anti-nuclear campaign that I got involved in the party. And then I read the book by Jonathan Porritt called Seeing Green. And if anyone hasn't read it, I commend it to you, because although it was written, I think, back in 1984 now, or maybe 86, 30 years ago and more, it is still highly, highly relevant, which in a way is kind of sad too, because it also demonstrates we haven't made as much progress as we might have expected to have done. It's a great book, and what it does essentially is to make connections between, for example, the way in which some human beings think that it's a logical way to solve a conflict is by nuclear weapons. It makes connections between that and the way in which we treat the environment upon which we live, this precious planet, the only one that we've got. That sense of exploitation is also the same kind of mindset that does that, and is the same kind of mindset that promotes an economic system which deliberately marginalises numbers of people. It's not some accident of capitalism that many people are left poor and marginalised. It is a direct, logical, deliberate consequence of a particular economic system. And this book, Seeing Green, basically connects all of those things in a marvellous way. So I read that book, and I remember vividly I was staying in a rather grotty bedsit in Clapham at the time, and I turned the book over when I'd finished it, and it said the Ecology Party office, as it still was when he wrote the book, was in the Clapham High Road. So I thought, this is meant to be, because here I am in Clapham, and the Green Party is based on the Clapham High Road. So I put the book down, literally there and then, marched up and down the Clapham High Road, confidently expecting to find a large building with a gold plaque saying Green Party. Eventually, I found a very small office behind a Chinese restaurant, which was the Green Party. But I got involved there and then, and that was 30 years ago and more. And then I got elected. I moved to Oxford, and on my third attempt, and there is a story there, we know that each time we stand for election, we might not win it that time, but it builds more and more people who get into the habit of voting Green, and they like the fact that we are persistent and we keep doing it and we stand, and eventually we do get elected. So back in '93, I was elected to Oxfordshire County Council. And for a while I was the lone Green Party voice on that council, and I know there are some people here who've been lone councillors on a council. It can be a little bit lonely, but it can be so important. And I just promise you, just one Green voice on one council can make such a difference. And even when the votes go 69 in favour and 1 against, as they regularly did, my husband would cheer me up by reminding me of that wonderful quote by Gandhi, which is that even if you're in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. And that is true, my friends, and we often feel that we're in a minority of one, or we feel that we're in a minority and our voice doesn't get heard as loudly as it should. And the 1 million people who voted Green in 2015 were never represented with the 20 and more MPs that should have been there if we'd had a fairer electoral system. But we're not going to give up, because we know how important it is to have that Green voice on those councils. I remember one of the issues that I was involved in Oxfordshire was actually around education, around trying to keep a special school open, not because I think special schools are the only way of dealing with and having education for people with special needs, but lots of people wanted the option of that, as well as mainstreaming special needs in mainstream schools too. And I stood up and spoke for those parents who wanted that school to stay open, and I didn't succeed. It was one of those 69 against and 1 in favour in that case. And I spoke to them afterwards. They'd been watching all of this from the gallery. And I said, I am so sorry, I've let you down so much, I am so sorry. And they were so wonderful, and I'll never forget what they said, which was that even if we don't win, the fact that we are there making those arguments is so important. The fact that we are giving voice to their concerns and standing up for them, whatever the issue is so important. And I'm so proud of the Green Party and what we do, because we do that. We speak truth to power. We're not in this because it's a shortcut to glory, because if it were, we'd probably have chosen the wrong vehicle. We are in this because we passionately believe that the way we live now is unsustainable in so many ways, socially and critically, environmentally. And I want to say a few words about the environmental crisis, because none of the other parties are anywhere close to understanding that in order to live in a sustainable way, we need to utterly change our economic system. It's not a case of simply adding a few green tinges to business as usual. We're talking about a very different kind of economic system. But the good news is that those changes that we need to make are changes, I would argue, that are going to probably lead to better quality of life for people as well. So this is absolutely not about hair shirts, and it's not about shivering around a candle in a cave. This is actually about a good news story. There's a wonderful cartoon, one of my favourites, of a professor in front of a whiteboard, and on the whiteboard she's written all of the advantages of moving to a zero-carbon economy, like local affordable food, like properly insulated homes, like affordable public transport, like kids playing in the streets again, like maybe not working so many hours and sharing work out more evenly. And then there's a student in her class who's got their hand up and a speech bubble says, "But what if climate change is a hoax and we've created a better world for no reason?" And the good news is about our message is that it is a positive message, and it is a message of hope. We know that there's a better way of organising our economy, our relationship with one another, the way in which we live today. And it's a much more hopeful, positive vision. And what we need to do is to hold that faith and get that message across. And there are so many good things that are happening right now. I know it's hard to see it sometimes. You've got Brexit, you've got Trump, you've got someone literally threatening nuclear war by Twitter. But at the same time as that, we've also just had this extraordinary success at the UN, where we now have a nuclear weapons ban treaty signed by 122 countries, and one of the organisations behind that has just been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. This is bloody extraordinary. And I know, detractors will point out that, well, okay, so the nuclear weapons countries weren't actually signed up to that nuclear weapons ban treaty, which is true, but every other ban treaty, like the ban on landmines or the ban on cluster munitions, started in that same way. You make those weapons unacceptable, you make them illegitimate, and then you begin to build, and more people will then come and join that campaign, and ultimately we will, I think, get rid of those hideous, hideous weapons. I want to say a few words about Brexit too, because that, of course, is the issue of the day. And again, I think the Greens have got a message on this that is distinctive and hopeful. The Greens are the only party that is saying that freedom of movement is actually something to celebrate. That being able to travel and to work and to study and to live and to love in 27 other member states is actually something rather precious. And in particular, those wonderful people... Those wonderful people, those EU nationals, of whom I have met a number here tonight, who have come to live in this country in good faith, and who absolutely are our friends and our neighbours and our family, and frankly are people without whom our public services would be even more crumbling than they are right now. They are our friends and neighbours, and we should be celebrating their contribution. And I feel ashamed that we have a government right now that is making you feel so unwelcome. So I'm glad. I am glad that the Green Party is standing up for that. I'm glad the Green Party is standing up for a referendum on the final deal. This is not a second referendum. This isn't rerunning what happened on the 23rd of June. The Prime Minister has said we will have a referendum... the Prime Minister has said we'll have a vote in Parliament of MPs on the final deal. And we're saying that's not good enough. It should go back to the British people. And I think that as more and more evidence comes out as just how disastrous Brexit is going to be, there is a good chance that we could potentially win that referendum. So I want to give people hope tonight. I know things have been difficult. The last election was undoubtedly hugely difficult. And I really know how bruised a lot of people feel. But I just want to say that I think times are very strange right now, that things can change extraordinarily quickly. And whatever we've done with integrity. And I'm proud of those places that did take difficult decisions around that election, whether to stand, whether not to stand, whichever way you made that decision. I think that we made those decisions with real integrity, with really trying to put what we understood as the national interest right at the heart of everything that we are doing. And I think we will get rewarded for that. I think that people will come to the Green Party again. Right now, the hordes that are following Jeremy Corbyn are like a swarm that can move. They are lending their vote on that occasion for that moment. But they know, and we can tell them, and it's becoming ever more clear, that right now the Labour Party is not a vehicle if you want to have a robust position on Brexit and freedom of movement. The Labour Party is not a vehicle if you want genuine environmental sustainability at the heart of everything that we do. And they're not the vehicle if you're looking for forward thinking on social justice issues too. Just this week we heard from the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that we're on course in the next 5 years to have over 5 million children living in poverty. We need to utterly rethink our welfare system. We need the radical policies that the Greens have been talking about for decades, policies like the basic income scheme, which will also be a policy that addresses the increasing automation that is happening in the world today. So we have an incredibly positive message, people, and I want you to go away today really, I hope, feeling that there is hope and that we can make a difference, because there's a wonderful phrase that we are the people that we're waiting for. So if we need to change things as we do, then we in this room are the people that are going to do that. So thank you so much for what you've already done. Please do whatever you can here in Norwich. You know that there are these elections coming up in May, and it's vitally important that we do everything that we can to keep those seats that we have and hopefully gain more. Whatever it is, an hour a week, an hour a month, it adds up, it makes a difference. So thank you so much for everything you're already doing, and thank you for what I hope you might do more in the future. Thanks.